Hello, ladies and gentlemen, how are you all? This is Azraildaim, and as you can see, here we are back on Baldur's Gate 3. Today, we'll be covering the Blighted Village and the first half of the Fezzerk Treebark Forge. Now, I've taken quite some time, and I think the best course of action for this video is going to be breaking it up into just the Blighted Village, and then we'll make a separate video about the Apothecary, and one for down in the Whispering Depths as well, just so we have all three maps kind of broken up into their own separate areas, and that way it's also easier for other people to find these videos. If you are searching for a guide for just the Apothecary or just the Whispering Depths, those will be available. But other than that, we'll be going through some achievements as usual that we can obtain, and a few tips and tricks that'll help you along your way. And without further ado, let's jump right on into it. Now, as we move throughout the Blighted Village, a few things I will be picking up are going to be things like incense, which can be sold for about 30 gold, plenty of books and other letters, as there is still the achievement for reading 100 books in one playthrough, as well as any other alchemy ingredients I can get my hands on. Now, to be completely honest, I will be taking everything out of the village worth more than 5 gold. So quite honestly, hide your kids, hide your wives, hide your lives, because I'll take them too. One thing to take note of is going to be the old key located on top of one of the crates in the building. This key is used to open the front door of the Fezzerk Forge. However, there is a second hidden entrance you can use to get in without the key. In the Blighted Village itself, there are plenty of scouts, which, if you rested recently, you should have an illithid roll inside your dialogue. If you are caught, this event does double back as an inspirational event for Astarion called Just Passing Through, so it can be worth getting caught just for some extra character EXP. However, it is best to sneak around and pick off a few of the surrounding goblins on the rooftops, just so you don't get ambushed by all of them. After dealing with them, we will be picking up the fire barrels in the vicinity. We will be needing them at some point in time at a later date. I will also point out the chest in the central area of town, which contains a Haste Helm, granting momentum for 3 turns at the start of combat. It's a decent starting helm for any character that may be lacking in movement speed, such as someone wielding a greatsword. It can help to further close gaps. If you have been following along, I have mentioned previously that I was building one of my characters as a Gloomstalker. Now this will come into play to cheese Lump's party of 3, by shooting cheeky arrows from the rooftops and using the bonus action of Dread Ambusher to hide, which makes you undetectable by Lump's party, so you can get free shots off in an infinite loop. If you have a charismatic character, alternatively it is possible to recruit them using the War Horn, and they may help you in a few battles when you summon them. Personally, I prefer to kill them off here and now for some extra EXP, as I do want to reach level 5 as soon as possible. Lump also drops a warped headband that grants a base stat of 17 to intelligence, so if you wanted to allocate your stat points to a different profession, for certain builds such as a tanky warrior warlock perhaps. Now in the same area we can also find a dirt mound next to the wall. You can dig this up for some extra loot. If you jumped up to the top of the tower, there's an investigation check as well as another book we can read to add to our quest of 100 books. Heading on over to the barn shack, a simple way to cheese these two quite easily is going to be by using all of the crates and barrels in the area to stack up against the door. This prevents them from being able to get out and use melee attacks. If you stack it high enough, they can actually not be able to jump out, and they may only throw a few stones and pitchforks. Meanwhile, your team can chip away at them with your own ranged attacks. One thing to take note of, however, is going to be killing both of them at the same time. Now, if you happen to kill one earlier than the other, the opposing one will enter a state of rage, making it that much more difficult to kill. If you need, you can also use a fire barrel or 2. Now, killing them will reward 95 EXP, and right next to the shack, you can also find a fireplace with a +1 dagger, a fine weapon for assassins early on. You can get it by using investigation checks, though do be careful, it is possible to break it. We can also find yet another hidden dirt mound below the campsite, and back to the gate along the wall we can find a hole in the ground with a curious book and a lamp. Now I will say I am quite disappointed that there is no genie inside the lamp, because genies and lamps go together like peanut butter and jelly. It's like having a waterfall but no loop behind it, which It's sad to see because we did get a genie in a lamp in Divinity Original Sin 2. I've just gone ahead and taken a moment to myself to go ahead and sort some of my gear, but on to rescuing the gnome, which I will say if you do successfully save him, you will see him later on in the story. But dealing with Goblin Fezzerk comes first. If you do go about this encounter in a specific way, it is possible to get multiple instances of rewarded EXP, such as number 1, slaughtering all of the goblins for kill EXP, and number 2, before that we can actually get successful dialogue checks and convince them to let the gnome go right before entering turn-based mode and wreaking a massacre, which brings us to number 3. It is possible to make Fezzerk kneel, and you can make him give you a +1 two-handed axe. It is also obtainable off of his cold, dead corpse. But after naughtily dealing with a gang of gobbies, if we head out back to the statue, if you do have Shadowheart in your party, we can get some juicy dialogue options into her personal life. But nonetheless, down inside the hatch, we can find the gnome's backpack, which contains a smoke powder satchel. I do believe this is the only item which is guaranteed to spawn inside this backpack every time, other than the heavy chest, which contains a blue pair of speedy boots. On the windmill levers themselves, you will want to pull the lever titled Brake Lever, which quite contradictory in itself. Who would have ever thought that a lever named as a release would actually release a gnome hurtling 100 feet through the sky towards his impending doom? Which, my first time around, I thought release meant release the gnome, but well, who can blame me?
Several bad puns later.
Now, wrapping up our little adventures, I will mention that if you have not yet slept after the Owlbear Cave, go ahead and do so now. It has happened to me before where the Owlbear Cub can potentially glitch and be caused not to spawn at the Goblin Camp when we go there. It is possible for it to randomly show up in your camp, but it is also a risk. I have had an instance where it just disappears entirely. While we are in camp, or one of the upcoming nights, you should come across an event with Astarion being a vampire. Now this is part of an achievement. You will need to let him partake upon your blood to obtain it, though it is possible to be killed, so please do know your limits. Concurrently, while we are inside the camp, at this point we should have collected enough camp supplies to completely full rest using nothing but alcohol. This is yet another achievement we can obtain. Let's just hope Zevlor doesn't find out we raided his wine cellar behind his back. We also have Gale, which should be asking to consume a magic artifact by now, which at this point we should be readily able to give him one of the many trashy trinkets we picked up along our journey, pushing us further down his questline. Now, after a full night's rest, we awaken, hungover from the previous night of partying, and woozy from blood loss. The next morning we will return to the Risen Road, and next time we will continue on towards Karlach, Will's Story, the Paladins of Tyr, the Iron Flask, and of course, more tips and tricks to help you along your journey safely. And without further ado, this has been Azraildaim, signing off.